Welcome to Beyond Sunday, where we have a cup of coffee, a conversation, and cultivate our relationships with one another in Christ. Beyond Sunday is a podcast ministry of Kindred Church, broadcasting to you from beautiful Orange County, California. And now, here's your host, Tom Grossi.
Well, welcome, and we thank you for joining us for yet another episode of Beyond Sunday, where we have a cup of coffee, a conversation, and enjoy getting to know members of our worship community here at Kindred Community Church. My name is Tom Grossi. I'm the host of this podcast, Beyond Sunday, and the minister of music here at Kindred. And it's my joy to have a special guest with us this week, Jonathan Nah. Johnny is grown up in our youth ministries, and as many of you know, he's a wonderful and a skilled worship leader. He's also the oldest son of a former pastor with us, Dan Nah, and we love the entire Nah family, and I'm just excited to have Johnny joining us today. And when I think of the Nah family, to kind of kick off our conversation, I think of this quote by Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill said, "The farther backward you can look, the farther forward you are likely to see." And when I think of looking into the Nah family and what they've been and meant to us here at Kindred Community Church, it's like looking into a beautiful piece of history with us here at Kindred. And it seems the more we look into this family, the more that we not only like what we see, but we can really see forward into how God is going to use them in the future. And we're already seeing the fruit of that with my guest here. Johnny, it's good to have you, man.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It seems like it's been in my 6 years at Kindred. When I first came, you were in the youth ministries, and you were sort of beginning to lead in worship in the youth ministries. And how you've grown up in front of my eyes is awesome. So I'm excited to what God's going to use for you in the future. But Johnny, maybe just kind of kick us off. We've just been having a great conversation with all of our guests, keeping it casual, and tell us a little bit about yourself, about your siblings. We obviously know your family, so you can kind of just rock skip through a little bit of that. And tell us maybe what it is that you're studying for right now, which I think is really cool, and what is it that you hope to do occupationally and all that. Give us a little start there.
Yeah, so I graduated a couple weeks ago from the Master's University.
All right.
Had a great time. And right now I'm focusing on getting my CPA license for accounting. So I graduated with a degree in business accounting, and it was a lot of work.
Yeah,
I'm super thankful just for my time there at TMU.
Our son was with you a couple years too. Our son Tyler also got his degree at Master's University. He did 2 years and got a business at Fullerton Junior College, and then transferred to Master. Played soccer there, and so he equally loves Masters University, but I know it's very near and dear to your heart. Now, while you were at Masters, maybe some people may know, but some may not know, especially those that are new in our church, you were like the leader of the chapel worship band for how many years? A couple?
Yeah, 2 years, yeah. One got cut short because of COVID, but 2
Everything
years.
Got cut short because of COVID. It's
sad, yeah.
Education got cut short as a result.
Exactly. Yeah, so I got to serve 2 years on the chapel band. There was a year before I served just playing bass or whatever they needed me to do for, a temporary sub basis.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed my time there. I learned so much at TMU. Yeah, it's very dear to my heart. And Tyler was in the same dorm as me for a little bit too.
Yeah. He was probably a little crazy, but
fun times we all were. Yeah.
Well, again, just give us the names of your siblings. Most of us here at Kindred know, but those who might be watching that are not normally part of our church, let us know that. Again, you're the oldest son of Dan and Mina Nah. Dan was our pastor of Care and Connections for many years here at Kindred. And by the time this podcast drops, they will be comfortably ensconced, we pray, in Washington, D.C., where they're starting their new ministry there. We're excited for them. We know that Mia is going with them, your youngest sis. So we're praying for her. But tell us about your siblings.
Yeah, so I have 3 siblings. I'm the oldest of 4, and I have a brother named Ben and 2 sisters named Catherine and Mia. And Mia's the younger one who's going to be going up to Maryland. Yeah.
And Ben also, folks, he plays drums, phenomenal musician, just as Johnny is. And so when we heard that Dan and Mina were going to take a new ministry, I got to tell you, I love Dan and Mina. But selfishly, and I must apologize, and I will do this via camera to Dan and Mina, who I know are watching, I was very, very sad and torn because I didn't want Dan and Mina to go. But then there was a part of me that's like, oh no, I'm losing Johnny and Ben too. But thankfully, in God's mercy, you're going to hang out, and you're thinking maybe you're going to probably seek employment here in Southern California. We never know what God's going to do in your life.
Yeah.
But.
So I accepted an offer with Deloitte in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So as for now, just waiting to see, whether they want me to be here or if they want me to be in LA. But I love Kindred, and I don't want to leave for now. So it's been a great time.
Well, that's music to my ears.
Right?
So you and your brother. So well, no, really, your whole family. Again, by the time this podcast drops, they'll be in Washington D.C. I think they're actually packing or coming close to packing and saying goodbye to some dear friends this week, and we're counting the Sundays that we know that they'll be their last times at Kindred. But as Pastor Philip said a couple weeks ago during our morning services and broadcast, we feel that this is a great opportunity to kind of have Kindred sister churches around the country. And I think of Dan and his new church, and also Matt Shackelford, who I know you grew under in your ministry and kind of cut your teeth. And I know Matt will be watching as well too. And we love Matt, and we know that he's watching, and give our blessing to them over at Central. Yeah. So tell us a little bit of kind of how you started. That's a little bit of a segue into. So you're in youth ministries, and you're doing your thing. You're playing bass guitar, and what kind of got you started to say, hey, I really want to sort of pursue this worship leading, because you are a very skilled worship leader, Johnny, and I've told your mom and dad this on the record and off the record, on camera and off camera, that to see both your growth. Not that you were bad before. Please don't take it wrong.
I think I was.
No, you weren't. But just your maturity, and I think your congregation sense. I think young worship leaders, that's probably the one area where I get a sense of young worship leaders that there maybe needs to be some growth in.
Totally.
Is that a young worship leader sometimes always doesn't have a congregation sense, meaning that there can sort of be a sense that if I'm just sort of lost in the moment and close my eyes and just sort of do my thing and I'm worshiping, then therefore I'm leading.
Right.
And so all I need to do is sort of just be in myself and in my own moment, and people will observe that and they'll immediately be engaged in worship. And that's not necessarily true. In fact, leading is much different than just a private worship moment. Not that both can't happen.
Totally.
But to learn that skill, to learn that you're leading a congregation that maybe just came from, a hectic work week or a fight on the way in the car to that you having that sense of this isn't about me, this is about us together. And anyway, I just pay you that compliment because I see that growth tremendous in you. But give us a little bit of kind of the early days. What sort of got you to where you're at as a musician with us?
Yeah, so the early days, I started learning guitar in middle school, El Rancho Charter School. So it's like right down.
All right,
yeah.
Our daughter Danielle went there.
Great
school. Did you guys have to wear the green and the purple?
We had to wear the uniforms. And the teacher would do uniform checks.
Yes.
It was the worst. Yeah.
Oh, I'm hearing you, buddy.
Yeah. I started there, and we were learning more like classic rock stuff. We were learning to play songs like American Pie and all that. So no Shane and Shane yet.
Yeah.
But then eventually I started playing for the youth group, and I started because Matt Shackelford was doing guitar lessons in his house. So I started with like a group of guys there, and it was super fun. Eventually started serving and playing bass in the youth group, and that taught me a lot as well. But when I actually started leading, I would say it was probably in early high school or maybe even towards the end of middle school. And of course, when you start, you're super excited and you feel like you have an idea what's going on, and the Lord teaches you every Sunday, every month something different, and He's still teaching me now new things.
I think very much like you. I think of my own life when my brother and I were leading in worship when we were really, really young and were kind of had our concert ministry. I think absolutely, even to this day, the hardest constituency of people to lead in worship is your own age group. like if you're a high schooler and you're leading a high school worship group, my hat's off to you, buddy. I should be taking notes from you, because I mean that's a hard gig.
Totally.
That is not easy to do. It's hard to be a leader among your peers, and you do it with such grace, and you're so competent in doing it. So
thank you.
So I think that's awesome, and that kind of leads to how you even started at Kindred, right? Because your mom and dad were here for a while before he became on staff, and then you got introduced to the youth group, and kind of the children led them, right? I mean, you first kind of got involved in the youth ministry, and then sometimes the parents followed, which happens, which is great, right?
Yeah, so I visited the youth group, and it was at Matt Shackelford's house.
Mm-hmm.
So
what year was that then?
That was like 8th or 7th grade for me.
Wow.
Yeah, and that, I visited that youth group, and it was just so shocking seeing just the worship and the fellowship and the way the gospel was preached. And I still remember how the gospel was preached that night, because it totally changed me. It totally impacted me. So, I mean, if Matt Shackelford is watching this, like, that's what...
Love you, Matt.
Yeah. The Lord used him so much in my life. Not only just to bring me to salvation, but just even bringing my family here. So, I mean, we probably wouldn't have this, podcast. I wouldn't be sitting down right now if it wasn't for the Lord using Matt back then.
Awesome.
So, super thankful for him.
Well, he's a dear brother and now senior pastor at a church in the Memphis area, and so we love Matt and Ashley and their family. And that was a loss when they left us, but we're obviously grateful for their ministry too, and we keep up with them and they with us, and so again, it sort of feels like what will now be your dad and mom's church, is sort of Kindred Extension Campus. We might just call it Kindred East. Everything east of the Rocky Mountains, I guess we're just calling Kindred East.
Kindred Part 2.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, hey man, tell us a little bit about what is it that you like doing for fun? I mean, I know that you do music, and I think for a while, I think a lot of people think that music is a lot of people's hobby.
Yeah.
But when you do it at the level that I or you do it at, in a sense, music, you don't just do that just as a hobby. That becomes something that is you really develop a skill set for. So you kind of look at it as part hobby, but really part, this is my calling, and part job. So there has to be kind of just something that you just kind of hang out and do for fun.
Yeah.
So what are kind of some of the fun things that you like to do, Johnny?
Ooh, fun things I like to do. I really like to cook, actually.
Nice.
I'm not like the best cook in the whole world.
Come on, man.
My sister Catherine cooks way better.
I hear she's like a mean Korean barbecue.
Yeah.
Like she's stepping up.
Yeah, she's
learning from mama, and now she's really good.
Oh
right?
yeah, totally. She's amazing at cooking. Yeah, so I like to do it just because it's relaxing for me.
I know.
And I love going to the market. I love getting the ingredients prepped and everything. But yeah, Catherine's an amazing cook.
So when you go to the market to get some of the Korean barbecue foods, I know some of it is really specific, right?
Sure,
So do you go to a market local here? Do you just go to the grocery store for that? Where do you normally go to get that food? Because I've been told it's like you need to try this, and then once I do, that will be my favorite. Right now, Dell and I think our favorite place to go, I've told your mom and dad this, is Monarch 9, which is a French Vietnamese place that we love. But I think if we got going on Korean barbecue, I don't think we'd ever look back. But where do you usually go to get that food?
I usually get my food, Korean food specifically, at a place called H Mart in Diamond Bar.
Okay.
It's a little bit, sometimes the food is a little bit, you don't know what you're getting, you don't know how it tastes, but it's always great just to go.
Wow.
And so I really like H Mart, yeah.
That's awesome. And also, Johnny, one area that maybe you could touch on a little bit too, I mean, you're just kind of a master of a lot of different skills.
Thank you.
You really have developed in your technology, in utilizing technology, and in our worship environment, and whether we're using Ableton or we're using click tracks or things like that, you've really gotten quite good at understanding technology. Maybe if I could pivot a little bit on this with you and say there's going to be some young people that are watching you that are in the youth ministries, and I know you've provided a lot of input even into KSM, Kindred Student Ministries right now, in helping to develop the next generation of leaders. Like, I look to you as the generation that's coming up, but there's a generation looking to you, and they're coming up. You're, if you will, I'm the old guy. I'm the old bald guy that'll be done one of these days. You're the next, right? But then after you, then there's a generation coming behind, and that's the circle of life and ministry that is such a joy to have. But maybe tell a little bit, any advice or counsel that you might have for someone who's learning their instrument, but also is maybe good at technology, that tell them how you utilize that and why you think that's a good thing.
Yeah, so I ran sound for high school and the Kindred student ministry, and
Yeah.
it was so tough. Like, you would get the iPad and you would look at all these settings and you'd be like, what the heck does this do? You look at a soundboard and it just looks like, man, you're running a spaceship or something. And the thing that really taught me was just doing it by myself, doing it as a hobby. So I got into sound recording and producing and doing all of that stuff just by myself. And what was crazy is after 2 years of doing that, just with my own laptop, using my own programs, back at my house, then I go and visit the soundboard again 2 years later, and it all just makes sense. And I was nowhere at that point 2 years before when I didn't know a thing about song producing or anything like that. And so I just learned that, there's an element where someone has to teach you and help you and say, here's what you press, here's what you don't press. But that that investment of time, that passion kind of really helped me get to that point in a way that a tutorial wouldn't, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah. So thank the Lord for that.
Well, and as I'm hearing you talk, it reminds me of an episode that we had recently with Patty Hamilton. And Patty said, I just took the 4 chords that I knew and the 3 chords that I knew and the truth, and I just started doing. I just took the guitar chords that I knew, the knowledge that I had at that point, and the 5 songs that those 3 chords fit with, and I just started doing.
Yeah.
And then God used it from there. And I think that that's really true of anything that we're doing in life, not just in ministry, but in vocation, is to gather what we have in our hands, our strengths, our weaknesses, our abilities, our inabilities, give them to God. And as a result, he can use them. And then we kind of learn by doing. I know that a lot of musicians are that way. I kind of learn that way. I'm a very visual type of a learner. And so that's a cool trait to be able to teach. And Johnny is, again, as a great musician, maybe I'll just do a brief commercial and say that Johnny's one of those guys that not only is he skilled on the platform, but he's got a great sense of ears and a great as a technician. And we can put him back in the video room when we're broadcasting on Sundays, and he does a phenomenal job there. So if you're watching and you're at Kindred and you want to know how to be involved in either of those ministries, especially in the technology where we're always in need, or like our camera crew that's here with Chris and Abby, there's a lot that happens behind the scene at Kindred. And Johnny's a good example of the fact that here's a guy that, in a sense, kind of started on the platform leading in worship and now has developed a skill that is also sort of behind the scene and on the platform. And so if people are interested in that, please contact me or contact Johnny, and we'll text each other, because all of it can be used for the glory of God.
Absolutely.
That was really kind of the desire of this podcast, really, to begin with, is I says, what can maybe I do of bringing on some interesting people, some people that a lot of members of our congregation and from around the country that even watch, or even around the world, that watch our church, that says, hey, who was that person that was leading in worship, or who played that instrument, or who did this? And say, I want to go beyond just what we do on the platform. I want to go beyond that and have them get to know you. And so I'm grateful that you've given that opportunity for us to be able to talk with you and to share. And tell us how we can pray for you, especially with your venture with CPA and studying for your test. Now tell us, you had 2 tests, is that right?
Yeah, so I took, if anyone knows their CPA terms, I took FAR and audit. And those are probably the 2, I would say, at least FAR is the most time-consuming.
Those sound super smart just by their names.
Yeah.
I know I would never be able to pass. Never pass it.
Yeah, so honestly, a big prayer would just be as I take those tests, just for diligence and self-control and just putting in time, because it's a lot of time to get those exams done and to take them. each exam is like 4 hours just to take it.
Intense.
So it's like, yeah.
And you've done 2?
I've done 2 so far. Yeah.
And you have 1 more?
I have 2 more after that. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like watching a 2-hour movie twice for each one. So
wow.
Yeah. So I'm really kind of nervous and kind of just trying to do my best with these exams. That could be a huge prayer request. Another big one is just for my family as they move. I mean, we already mentioned that in the beginning, but especially for my sisters as they're both starting, new seasons of life, and for my brother too.
Yeah, and I think Catherine and Mia, especially Mia being in a different school.
Yeah.
And I think of her and pray for her. We were talking a little bit before we started rolling cameras that our son Tyler was a senior in high school, and when Della and I started here at Kindred, and through a series of what we believe to be really clear signs that this is what we should do, we left Tyler in Nashville to finish out his senior year, and it was a great blessing for him. I think it's kind of tailored depending on your child and depending on the circumstances, but it just ended up working out very nicely. But kids are resilient. They're not kids anymore. They're young adults. But we pray for her. And no, Catherine's down at SDSU. Is that right?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
And she's an Aztec. Is that right?
So it's a new change for her as well. Yeah.
So we know, and again, just from personal experience, whenever a family responds to a calling like this, it's a family affair, and it affects everybody's lives.
Yeah.
And there's some bumps in the road, but boy, I tell you, with the kind of parents that Dan and Mina are, and what they've already instilled in all of you kids that we can see, that just seems so obvious. I'm sure they're not perfect. I'm sure that they occasionally lose their temper,
as we all do.
As we all do. Yeah. But just in how they've instilled a rich heritage of love for Christ and love for the church, and especially love for Kindred in you, is so inspiring to see in all of your siblings, in you for sure, that it's a joy to be able to see that and just know that, especially in the hard times when Mia or Catherine or Ben or you feel kind of lonely and like, where are we going, a little bit out of place, that God's with you, and that he's brought you through this, and you will look back on this. All of you kids will look back on this, and you will see that chapter turn, and you will see that relationships will come into your life, challenges will come into your lives, but blessings will come into your life that you wouldn't have expected if you were just kind of clicking down the same road.
Right.
And that's what we found with our son Tyler when we were in kind of that situation of family here, family there, and so I just encourage you with that I know it'll be cool. Before I kind of wrap up here, tell us kind of what you're doing with KSM right now. I know you've been helping and working and doing some leading with Mike over there. Yeah. KSM is our student ministries here at Kindred, and it's kind of full circle for you because you left a boy and came back a man, right? You kind of left after high school, you went and did college, and now you're coming back, and now you're helping to lead and provide some direction in that. Yeah. We just kind of want to give a plug to Jonathan Clubb and our student ministries. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing over there.
Yeah, so right now I'm helping with sound and tech over there. So just, helping the guys kind of know what to do with that, and that's been a joy. Occasionally playing, occasionally leading for them as well. And then in a couple of months, I'll be going up to Camp Regen with Grace Community just to help with lead their summer camp.
And you're going to lead the summer camp at Grace Community.
Yeah.
Dr. MacArthur's church, of course, which of course we're very like-minded to them, and so there's going to be a lot of students there.
Yeah, ton of students.
That's a big crowd.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's super fun. I always love going to those events. Those are cool.
Again, my hat's off to you, my brother. I love you, and I admire your gifts. I do, and for you to lead worship in front of your peers is a tall order and a tough task, but you do it with such skill and such grace that it's been a joy to have you serving with us, and I hope there'll be more days, and trust there'll be more days ahead with the Knopf family, part of the Knopf family, still here at Kindred. All right, man, last question. This half an hour like flies by with all the guests that we've had here.
Totally.
But we have to ask, we've got these nifty coffee mugs, Beyond Sunday coffee mugs.
Yeah.
Some people on Sunday mornings have been asking me if they could have their coffee mug. I said, well, you got to sit in my hot seat, I guess, to get the mug. But tell us what's your favorite coffee or tea order, man. Do you have one? We're kind of making a list here.
I love the iced vanilla latte, and then there's some great places, but there's a place called Underground's Coffee in Santa Clarita, and their iced vanilla latte. Some people didn't like it, but I loved it, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's great.
And with Korean barbecue, what do you usually drink with Korean barbecue?
I usually just drink water, but it's all about knowing which meats to order. So if you go there, ask for the thin beef brisket and the bulgogi as well. That's good.
All right, I'm going to rewind this podcast when I go to Korean barbecue and say, look, this is the master of us all is telling me exactly how we need to order it here. So that's great. Well, Johnny, thank you for the opportunity to be able to interview you and to get to know you personally and once again your family. And thank you for joining us here for our podcast on Beyond Sunday. We will come to you each week with a new podcast and new guests and new kind of exciting interviews to get to know some of the members of our worship team. You can find us on YouTube, on our YouTube channel at Kindred Church Anaheim Hills. You can search for that. Or you can just download this podcast on any podcast app of your choosing. Until next week, my name is Tom Grassi. I'm the host of Beyond Sunday. And I thank you for listening to this episode. And we look forward to seeing you back next week. God bless.
Thanks for joining this episode of Beyond Sunday, brought to you by Kindred Church. For updates and new episodes, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Kindred Church Anaheim Hills, or join us on Facebook or on our website at www.kindredchurch.org.